Part 27. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 262. It's useless, everyone is just a ghost to them. Minayuping looked under them, and sure enough, everyone had white shadows. When we lowered our heads and looked at ourselves, everything under our feet was empty, with no shadow at all. Fatty Wang calmed down and said slowly, "Brother Su, what's going on right now? I've never seen anything so cruel." This time, even Sumu couldn't answer. When he came up, he said, "This is the first time I have encountered this kind of thing. I can only act according to the circumstances." Minayuping was also thinking in his heart. If this is an illusion, then everyone should not enter the same illusion. "Come in." At this time, a foreigner suddenly shouted. Minayuping followed his eyes and saw that the cave where everyone had just come up had disappeared. This is really life-threatening, and everyone has no way out at this moment. The mercenaries were a little panicked, this was completely beyond their understanding. Shirley Yang kept shouting from the side, asking them to calm down. Minayuping looked around and said, "These people don't seem to be able to see us. How about we find a way out of the city?" Sumu looked up at the sky. It was still night as usual, and said, "This is the only way we can do it now. The three of you go in front, Shirley Yang, you and your people follow behind, don't get lost." Everyone organized themselves and followed the three of us. Minayuping looked at the buildings in the city while walking. There were many neat large pillars on the streets. When he looked up, he saw the four characters "City of the Dead" written on them. This pillar looked more and more familiar to Minayuping. Finally, Minayuping remembered, wasn't this the same pillar at the edge of the city where we entered the sandstorm? Minayuping thought to himself, could it be that everyone has come to that city again? But it is impossible for everyone to run so far. With all kinds of questions, Minayuping saw something even more surprising. In the distance, there was a huge female sculpture that seemed to be about 100 meters high. Her appearance is that of a typical foreigner. Her hands are held up, holding a huge iron box. Although it was still night, Minayuping took a telescope and looked over there. This box was clearly the one where everyone got the parchment, but it was much larger than the one everyone encountered. Continuing to move forward, Minayuping discovered something was wrong. Everyone seemed to be getting closer to the center of the city. Menjuping turned to look at Sumu. The 3 sticks of incense in his hand had burned out, but the smoke could not guide everyone at all. Fatty Wang also saw that the direction everyone was walking was wrong, and asked, "Brother Su, why are you leading me further and further in?" Sumu sighed and said, "I can't help it, the ghosts here are too much. It's scary. There is something in this city that always pulls everyone into the city." While everyone was talking, Minayuping felt that the sky was getting darker, and everyone quickly raised their heads to observe. They saw the stars in the sky disappear into the dark night one by one at this moment. Minayuping couldn't help but said, "The master of the undead stretched out his hand to the sky, and the whole world will fall into endless darkness." After Minayuping finished speaking, Fatty Wang gave Minayuping's head a hard blow. He slapped him and cursed, "Brother, have you been possessed again? What nonsense are you talking about?" After being hit by Fatty Wang like this, Minayuping didn't feel much pain, but he woke up and said in confusion, "What did I say?" Fatty Wang looked at Minayuping in surprise, then looked at Sumu again, and stopped talking to Minayuping. Minayuping looked at the strange behavior of the two of them and didn't bother to talk to him anymore. As they walked, everyone came to an open square. In front of everyone's eyes was the huge female stone statue. On both sides of the stone statue were tall stairs leading to a place that looked like a temple. At this moment, 2 screams came from behind the team. Minayuping quickly looked back and saw 2 mercenaries being carried to the sky by a ball of yellow sand and torn into pieces as everyone watched. Fragments. A strong smell of blood immediately wafted into the air. Sumu suddenly shouted no. Yinling opened his dark eyes when he saw blood. They can look at everyone in front of them. Run, as soon as Sumu finished speaking, Mi Nayuping saw all the pedestrians on the street stopped. He stopped his steps and looked towards everyone in unison. Their eyes were no longer dull, now they were all filled with greed. Shirley Yang shouted, "Everyone, run to the temple." Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 263. Everyone ran to the temple. Minayuping quickly followed them. He used his gun to stop them while running. Although they are not from the same world as everyone else, this boundary has been broken now, and the gun can actually hit them. Everyone is here on the steps. They had a geographical advantage, and with everyone's fierce firepower, they couldn't attack them for a while. However, Minayuping found that although they would disappear with one shot, on the street behind them, there were a lot of people coming in a steady stream. Minayuping noticed that another person in red clothes was coming from behind, and he quickly said, "Sumu, something is wrong. I have already taken care of the person in red clothes just now." When Fatty Wang heard this, he cursed his grandfather. "Have you really entered the underworld? You can't even kill ghosts, Su." Mu thought for a moment, signaled everyone to stop firing, and said, "According to ancient mythology, since this is the city of the dead, it means that it is the territory of Kailan. I'm afraid, there is some way for them to be resurrected." The group of people slowly walked up the stairs. This was the only thing that made everyone happy. They could only walk slowly, giving everyone enough time to react. Minayuping took a telescope and looked at the people behind the direction they came from. Suddenly became clear, and he said loudly, "The place where they were resurrected seems to be where the Kiran statue was, where everyone just came. The temple is extremely tall. A 3-meter high door is open in front of everyone. Although they don't know what's inside, they can't care about that much. Everyone rushes in. Everyone works together to close the door hard. Inside we were instantly plunged into incomparable darkness. Everyone quickly put on their search helmets. In a place like this, night vision goggles were of no use. There was a very open place, directly in front of everyone, the innermost high platform. There is a huge statue of the Kiran god on it, and there are some ancient style paintings on the surrounding walls. Fatty Wang looked at it and said, "It's really strange. Why do I feel that these murals are exactly the same as what I saw in that cave just now?" "Who?" Bai also nodded and said, "I remember the book said these paintings were specially painted in the tomb chamber. How come there are such things in the temple?" Menyuping looked at these murals carefully, and they seemed to be painting a story of worship. The people in the paintings were carrying a huge jar, and there was a child and a small snake in the jar. After a while, the snake got inside the child's body. The last painting is a monster with a tongue and a human body. Behind it is the huge sculpture that everyone saw outside. Menjuping looked at the ground again, where there happened to be a big jar, and the shape of this jar was the same as the one in the painting. Minayuping was shocked. Only the lower half of the jar was left, and there were some fragments of the jar next to it, which meant that inside something escaped. Bang bang bang. Suddenly there was a burst of gunfire, followed by a strong stench, and everyone quickly put on gas masks. Everyone pointed their searchlights at that location. I saw a huge figure more than 2 meters tall standing in that corner. There was only a piece of linen covering his body that looked like it had been there for a long time. All the bullets just hit his body, and some translucent mucus flowed out. Everyone slowly moved the light upwards, and when it was pointed at his head, Minayuping discovered that there was not a human head on his neck, but a big snake head. At this moment, he was hissing and swallowing the snake letter. As soon as everyone's lights hit his eyes, his neck suddenly stretched weirdly, like a big snake, and rushed towards everyone. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 264. After being rushed by him, everyone's team immediately dispersed. Men Yuping and Fatty Wang were both rushed to the left, while Sumu and the others turned to the right. A series of gunshots continued to sound, and even the walls were shot with sparks. Mina Yuping only felt a black shadow swaying around, and after a few more mercenaries screamed, there was no more sound. Mina Yuping shouted Sumu, "Do you still have some realgar powder? Sprinkle it quickly." Sumu had already fought with this monster. Mina Yuping saw a huge tongue rushing towards Sumu, but was blocked by him. The knife blocked the attack. Sumu dodged and shouted, "Realgar powder is useless. I'm afraid this thing is from an old man and has become a spirit long ago." After hearing what Sumu said, Mina Yuping's heart suddenly became cold. Could it be that painting the monster on the bed is the one in front of you? Then it must have a lifespan of several thousand years. Fatty Wang whispered next to the stuffy oil bottle, "It belongs to his grandfather. This thing was made by those ancient people from living people, and it was placed in a temple like this to be worshipped. I'm afraid it has already become spiritual. I'm afraid the methods to deal with ghosts are of no use to it." Mina Yuping saw Fatty Wang taking a few talismans and pasted them on his chest and back, and asked in confusion, "Fatty Wang, what are you doing? Did you post it to the wrong person?" Fatty Wang looked at Mina Yuping and said, "Brother, I have to rely on you now." Mina Yuping didn't understand what Fatty Wang meant, so he suddenly shouted the secret technique of Xiangzi, "The corpse spirit enters the body. Go." After saying the last word, Mina Yuping felt that Fatty Wang was holding a charm and pressed it hard against his forehead, and his body began to move unconsciously. I only heard Fatty Wang shaking the bell and shouting, "The corpse god suppresses evil." After hearing this, Mina Yuping seemed to have heard some order and rushed towards the big snake, wrestling with him. Together. At this time, Mina Yuping finally understood what Fatty Wang was doing. It turned out that he had been possessed by him, and now Mina Yuping was like a corpse under his hands, allowing him to control it. The Xiangzi corpse exorcist's technique of inviting gods is completely different from other techniques of inviting gods. He does not invite gods to his own body, but to the bodies of others. After inviting him, he would control that person like a god of joy. Mina Yuping wanted to scold her, but she couldn't speak. Through the gap next to the spell, Mina Yuping saw the huge tongue rushing towards him. Mina Yuping was so frightened that he wanted to run away quickly, but he punched him with his right hand unconsciously. I only heard a click, and I don't know where the snake's head was broken by Mina Yuping. Mina Yuping was surprised to feel his fist, but he didn't feel any pain at all. He couldn't help but sigh at the power of Xiangzi's magic. Suddenly, the snake's head, which had reached its end, moved again, and actually wrapped Mina Yuping's entire body around his body, just like a big snake hunting. The snake shrank tighter and tighter, but Mina Yuping couldn't feel the pain. The big snake bit Mina Yuping on the head. Men Yuping closed his eyes and waited for death. Unexpectedly, Men Yuping heard another click. When he opened his eyes, he saw that it was actually the 4 pieces he had bitten on his head. The fangs are broken. At this time, Mina Yuping heard the sound of bells in his ears again, and he suddenly felt that his body was extremely powerful. With a strong effort of his 2 arms, his entangled body collapsed. Mina Yuping felt extremely happy and wanted to shout out, but he didn't expect that when he opened his mouth, he let out a howl like a wild beast. I don't know if the monster was afraid of Mina Yuping's howl or was tired from the beating. He actually retracted his head, shook his figure a few times, and disappeared from everyone's sight. Watching him leave, Mina Yuping felt his muscles all over his body relax, knowing that Fatty Wang had unlocked the divine invitation technique. Minayuping tore off the talisman on his forehead and went over to curse. Unexpectedly, Fatty Wang came over with a smile first, hooked Minayuping's shoulder and said, "Okay, little brother, you can actually express yourself freely. Finally, that zombie roar in front of me is really awesome." Looking at his smiling expression, Minayuping really didn't know what to say. Sumu and the others also came over, and now only the third family, Shirley Yang and Hu Ba were left. Peacock didn't know where he had gone. Just this one man caused everyone heavy losses. Sumu nodded to Minayuping and said, "Brother, thanks to you this time." Shirley Yang and Hu Ba also said thank you to Minayuping. Seeing them all thanking Minayuping, Minayuping actually lost his temper a long time ago. He quickly put aside Fatty Wang's hand and continued to observe the temple. At this time, Shirley Yang and Hu Ba were both in a low mood. They brought a group of people, but now only two of them are alive. Hu Ba, as a man, recovered first. He pulled the gun bolt and said, "Damn it, I'm going to destroy this place to avenge my brothers." Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 265. Damn it, I'm going to destroy this place to avenge my brothers. Minayuping looked at the mural carefully again and found that this thing was actually put here by the ancient residents as the guardian of the temple. It felt a bit scary that such an evil thing was used to guard the temple. But think about it carefully. I thought that the god of the underworld was worshipped here, and he should be very fond of things like death and torture. At this moment, Sumu and the others found a hole in the ground behind the statue, and Minayuping hurried over. Just when we reached the entrance of the cave, the cold air inside rushed up, and the cold stuffy oil bottle couldn't help but tremble. Seeing that everyone was still hesitating, Fatty Wang said, "What are you still thinking about, brother? Jump now, or you'll all die here." After that, he climbed down first. Minayuping heard a dong 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 knock on the door. I'm afraid those people had already rushed up. Compared to waiting to die here, Minayuping still had better. I was willing to run down and give it a try. As soon as I jumped down, I found that there was also a thick layer of sand on the ground here. In front of everyone, there was another tunnel. Everyone had no other choice but to walk forward. The searchlight, the visibility here was very low, and everyone couldn't see very far away at all, so they had to move forward slowly. Listening to the footsteps, Minayuping found that everyone had come to a very open place. He didn't know who stepped on what mechanism. Suddenly, the whole area lit up. This was a huge cave, and the inside of the cave was actually filled with sparkling gold. Not only gold nuggets, but also various items and sculptures made of gold. Menju bottle, I have never seen so much gold, and I can't open my eyes because of the glittering gold. At this moment, Minayuping finally understood why so many people risked their lives to go to ancient tombs to fish for things. Sure enough, they were making a fortune. What a great place. Hu Ba picked up the gold nugget at his feet, weighed it in his hand, and said, "Damn, the purity is so high. If this pile of things were taken outside, it would probably be enough for a country to spend 4 to 5 years. Shirley Yang was more cautious. He threw back the gold nugget in Hu Ba's hand and said, "Don't move around, be careful of any traps." As soon as Shirley Yang finished speaking, Minayuping heard something moving inside the gold pile. Suddenly, many dry palms stretched out from the ground, and everyone quickly retreated to the door. I saw people crawling out of the gold pile under the ground. Several mummies were found, and their bodies were wrapped in strips of white cloth. Minayuping immediately thought of their names. Aren't these the mummies? Seeing them rushing towards everyone said nothing and just shooting at them with guns. The number of them was increasing, and everyone was forced back into the tunnel by them. While fighting and retreating, everyone retreated into another cave. Sumu took out a grenade and fired it into the tunnel. After throwing it, there was an explosion, and the tunnel was blown up. Mina Yuping thought that this was the end of the matter, but he didn't expect that there were other openings here, and there were waves of footsteps coming from the other side. Everyone dared to stay, so they chose an opening where there was no sound of footsteps and got in. The opening was not big, so everyone could only crawl in. As he crawled, Fatty Wong said, "There's something wrong with these things. Why does the stuffy oil bottle feel like this? It's organized. Is there a boss here?" In normal times, Mina Yuping would definitely have replied to him, but at this moment, Mina Yuping just wanted to crawl out quickly. As he crawled, a faint light came from in front of him. Mina Yuping was overjoyed. It seemed that there was a person crawling in front of him. Exit. Everyone climbed out one by one. After standing up, Mina Yuping discovered that this was actually the entrance to another cave. Everyone still did not run outside. In front of everyone, there was a staircase. You know where it leads. And that faint light came from the bottom of the stairs. Sumu suddenly made a silent gesture, and everyone immediately fell silent. Mina Yuping listened carefully, and on the stairs underneath, someone was actually talking. Although I couldn't hear what was being said, it was very rhythmic, as if a monk was singing. Everyone's originally relaxed hearts became suspended again, and Hubei asked, "What should I do? Do you still want to go this way?" Su Mu listened for a while and replied, "Of course, with so many mummies in the back, maybe the front is the only hope of survival." Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 267. The ghost in the black water over there began to struggle again, and was about to merge with the mummy on the bed. Seeing this, Sumu directly threw the knife in his hand, pierced the thing in the black water, and stuck on the wall behind. The thing in the black water screamed and turned into a puddle of liquid again. The mummy was so angry that he got off the bed himself and rushed towards Sumu. Sumu shouted, "Fat Wang, go and help me get rid of the small ones, leave this big one to me." After hearing this, Fatty Wang hurried over and ran together with Mina Yuping. At this time, Hubei and Shirley Yang also took care of the little mummies and rushed towards the Mina Yuping. With the help of the three of them, the pressure on Mina Yubo was immediately reduced a lot. However, there were still 7 soldiers chasing Mina Yubo behind him. Mina Yuping yelled, "Damn it, why are you always chasing me?" Fatty Wang is indeed the #1 corpse exterminator in western Hunan. At this moment, he has solved the soldier and ran to Mina Yuping's side again. He smiled and said, "Oh little brother, these dirty words are coming out in a jiffy, it seems like he is an adult." Mina Yuping was still in the mood to joke with him, and said loudly, "Fat Wang, if you have the ability, you can quickly solve the pile of things at the back." "Don't keep talking about these things," Fatty Wang said. "Young man, don't be so impatient. Just wait." After saying that, Fatty Wang ran behind Mina Yuping. I don't know what method he used. He only heard the sound of sand explosions coming from behind. When Mina Yuping looked back, all those soldiers had changed, turned into sand. Mina Yuping asked in surprise, "Fat Wang, why are you so powerful all of a sudden?" Fatty Wang said, "These things are so controlled that as long as we cut off their contact, it will be easy to solve." The sound of fighting came from Sumu's side. Everyone ran over and saw that Sumu was fighting with the big mummy, but there were already a few bloody wounds on Sumu's body. Yuping saw that the big mummy recovered to its original state in an instant after being chopped by Sumu, without any damage at all. Men Yuping never expected that even the knife in Sumu's hand could not do anything to him. Injury. Seeing that everyone was safe, Sumu quickly shouted, "Brother, use the Requiem curse quickly. I can barely hold on to this thing." While speaking, another gash was added to Sumu's arm. Although Mina Yuping was a little suspicious, how could such a ferocious thing be solved with a Requiem spell, but now there was no room for Mina Yuping to think too much, so he immediately took out his hand. He took out a few yellow talismans, drew a spell on them with blood, and shouted, ashes return to ashes, earth returns to earth, souls from the underworld return to the underworld. A gust of dark wind blew past Men Yuping, but the big mummy was still attacking Su Mu crazily. Men Yuping shouted loudly, Su Mu, this spell is useless. Don't speak Chinese, speak in Ming language, speak it in Ming language. Su Mu said while resisting. Men Yuping was anxious. How could Men Yuping know what Minjiao said? Fatty Wang saw that Men Yuping was already sweating on his forehead, and reminded him next to Men Yuping, brother, just calm down, think carefully about the words you saw on the pillars, and just speak them out. After hearing Fatty Wang's words, Men Yuping immediately took a deep breath and began to recall the strange words he saw. Suddenly, a flash of light flashed in his mind, and Men Yuping read out again in the dark language, dust to dust. The earth returns to the earth, the soul from the underworld returns to the underworld. This time, as soon as he finished speaking, a strong wind blew over. Men Yuping actually saw a translucent skeleton rushing over on a carriage, passing directly through Men Yuping's body and heading towards the big mummy. Rushed. The big mummy also felt the movement here, looked back, showed a look of horror, and then turned around and ran away. However, the ghost carriage was much faster than him, and before he could escape to the steps the carriage passed through his body. But unlike Men Yuping, after passing through his body, Men Yuping clearly saw that there was an extra human soul on the carriage. The mummy roared and thought he wanted to catch up with the carriage, but the carriage had completely disappeared. Seeing that, he turned around again and rushed towards Su Mu. Men Yuping asked loudly, Su Mu, why is this thing still useless? Su Mu wiped the scar on his arm and said, it's no problem this time. Shirley Yang, Hu Bei, give me a fight. The two got the order and beat the big mummy with their guns. But after a while, after a burst of smoke, Men Yuping saw that the big mummy was also beaten into sand. Finally, the area became completely quiet. Men Yuping hurried over to support Su Mu and help him simply treat the wound. The three of them also gathered around. Su Mu was really tired this time. He gasped and said, everyone eat something quickly now, dry food and water, and rest to replenish your strength. This thing is probably not the real owner here. After listening to Su Mu's words, Fatty Wang's hand holding the bandage shook twice. 16 of us have died, and we have worked so hard to get to this place, but we haven't even met the real owner yet. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 268. Men Yuping glanced at everyone. They were also shocked by the news. They were all sitting aside and eating their food quietly. With great difficulty, Men Yuping finished treating Su Mu's wounds and took something to eat with Su Mu. Halfway through eating, Men Yuping felt like he was suffocating in his heart, and finally couldn't help but speak out, Su Mu, do you think so many people have died along the way, is it worth it? Men Yuping said. When asked, not only Su Mu but also everyone else raised their heads. Su Mu glanced at Men Yuping and said, there is no question whether it is worth it or not. Everyone who is willing to come here already knows the risks here. I didn't hide it from them. Hu Bei also added, brother, those who work in our profession can survive for a day. These brothers who are following us all know the level of this task. Men Yuping took a breath and said, oh, I don't blame anyone, I just feel so depressed and uncomfortable. Although everyone keeps saying they want to go to King Lu's tomb, they don't know where they are now. Not only the destination, but also the way back. Fatty Wang, seeing that Men Yuping was a little depressed, he patted Men Yuping on the back and said, oh, my little brother, when I was your age, I was not afraid of anything. I didn't know how many times I took on the job of robbing tombs. Let's go. There are just a few broken mummies here. I'll deal with them all for you later. Chapter 152 The Nauseating Men. Sumu had already finished eating. After wiping his mouth, he said to the stuffy oil bottle, "For the first needle on my head must have broken the tomb of King Lu. Brother, I have asked you before you came. I brought you here because you said you were not afraid of death." Mina Yuping stared. He looked into Sumu's eyes and said, "I'm not afraid of death. I just don't want everyone to die in an unknown way. This would be so unfair to everyone." Seeing Mina Yuping's serious face, Sumu patted Men Yuping. Looking over his shoulder, he said, "Don't worry, I will arrange for their families to be arranged by Fatty Wang. And for you, I will definitely lead Fatty Wang to complete this transaction and go out safely for some reason." Mina Yuping saw Sumu acting like this. "I assured everyone seriously that I felt as if I had taken a reassurance. I was no longer so depressed and finished the food with big mouthfuls. Everyone took another rest and finally regained some strength. Shirley Yang and the others checked the ammunition and found that there were not many bullets left. Since grenades are relatively powerful, everyone sparingly uses them, so everyone still has a few of them. Fatty Wang had been studying the pool of black water after eating. At this time, he finally stood up and sighed. His grandfather's, "I finally understand what this thing is. This damn thing is the yin-ju cultivated by those ancient people pool." "Juyin pond?" Mina Yuping said doubtfully. "How can such a small pool gather yin?" Although the yin qi in this water is very heavy, Mina Yuping still disagrees with Fatty Wang's statement. The terrain here is not considered a concave shape and cannot contain yin qi at all. Besides, even if it is a man-made pool, it will not be able to absorb the yin qi. You have to bury a lot of dead people. "Brother, I didn't say that this small pool of water is the Juyin pool," Fatty Wang said with a frown, and then he knocked on the floor again, as if listening to something. Sumu saw it and went over to knock. Fatty Wang stood up again and said, "Do you remember that the city is called what? The city that guards the underworld. If taken literally, I think this is Fart. If the underworld really exists, how can it be protected by such a small town? But if you think about it carefully, if the ancient people wanted to guard something, then this thing must be near it." Fat Wang's words reminded Men Yuping. Seeing Sumu still banging on the ground, Men Yuping suddenly realized and said, "Fat Wang, you mean there is something else under this?" Fatty Wang nodded and said, "Myths are all based on reality. If the ancients did not make them up randomly, the tomb of King Lu is very likely to be down there." Mina Yuping couldn't help but tremble when he heard Fatty Wang tell the answer. According to the information he had learned before, King Lu wanted to build an underworld so that he could be king underground after death. Such an idea, in the dynasties of various countries, there will be emperors to do it. The most famous one is Qin Shi Huang of our country, who built a huge tomb of terracotta warriors and horses, and continued to fight with him after his death. Sumu also stood up, said, "Although mythical stories are not credible, they can be relied upon in a certain sense. Under this small puddle, there is probably a large Juyin pool." With that said, Sumu called Mina Yuping over and asked Mina Yuping to lie on the stone bed where the big mummy had been lying. He said, "Brother, don't you always dream of strange things? You can try lying on it. See how it feels." Although Sumu's request was a bit weird, Mina Yuping still had to go ahead. There was no other way. Who could make Sumu better than Mina Yuping? Mina Yuping sat down on it, and instantly felt a chill that penetrated into his bones. The coolness that washed over Mina Yuping's body was not a simple cold, but a chill from deep within. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 271. When Fatty Wang walked up to everyone, there was a trace of anger in his eyes. He said, "His grandfather, what on earth did this ancient man want to do? He actually built something like this." Everyone looked puzzled, and Fatty Wang said to everyone. Before he even got there, he discovered that the scenery in front of everyone was not real at all, but was painted on it. In other words, everyone is still in a large cave with a valley drawn on it. Hubei I still refused to give up, pointing to the sun in the sky, and said, then how do you explain this thing? Can the words of ancient people still emit light? Mi Yuping also wondered how the sun could be fake. Sumu said this thing is just a device that can emit light. Although I don't know the principle, the ancients must have made it thousands of years ago. Sumu's explanation was a bit vague and far-fetched, but everyone agreed I can only choose to believe it. Looking back, we saw a huge palace behind everyone, which looked very familiar. Shirley Yang said in surprise, isn't this the palace of King Lu? I've seen it many times in books introducing ancient times. The outside of this palace is the same as in the photo, in a large valley. That's it? Mi Yuping was a little surprised after hearing this. Fatty Wang looked at it again and found that it was really King Lu's palace. Mi Yuping looked at Sumu in disbelief. Sumu said, it seems that everyone has really found the right place this time. Mi Yuping also answered, yin and yang are twin tombs. There is yin and yang combine. 1. The soul is immortal. This is the 16-character description of the yin-yang tombs. It means that the yin-yang tombs are all built exactly the same, and there are yang tombs and yin tombs. The better they are built, the more identical the patterns of the two will be. Of course, the main tomb chamber must be different. The puppet hidden in the yang tomb only serves the real owner in the yin tomb. Looking at the layout outside, Mi Yuping couldn't help but sigh. King Lu was too terrifying. He even created the appearance of the outside. I don't know how many people died and how much money was spent to complete it. This cemetery. Sumu said it is rumored that King Lu died at the age of 19. The cause of death has not yet been determined. I guess he wanted to remain young and enter the underworld. Alas, I don't know why he chose to enshrine the unicorn in the end. In short, everyone must be careful when entering. If you can build such a large formation, I'm afraid it's much more dangerous inside than above. Brother, I heard you say before that this place has the same structure as King Lu's palace. Why don't I lead the way? Shirley Yang suddenly volunteered and wanted to be the first one. Everyone looked at her with strange expressions. It's not that they didn't believe her because she was a woman, but that this place was too weird and they used ordinary mercenary moves. There was no use at all. Seeing everyone's eyes full of doubts, Shirley Yang explained, I have been to King Lu's Palace Museum several times before, and I still remember some of the structure inside. Su Mu shook his head and said it's useless. Although the structure is the same, the feng shui is actually completely opposite. One wrong step, and there will be murder everywhere. Let me lead the way. With that said, Sumu walked in ahead of everyone else. Fatty Wang and Mi Yuping followed, and the two of them continued to walk to the back. When everyone entered, the first thing they saw was a very deep tomb passage. It was said to be a tomb passage, but there were paintings on both sides. It was full of murals, and it seemed to be a scene of a group of people worshipping a young king. The king was wearing a golden mask, and his face could not be seen. After walking for dozens of steps, Sumu suddenly stopped. This was what everyone had just come down from. Place. Men Yuping looked up and saw that the big crater that had just exploded was gone. Even the cigarette butts and paper figures that should have been on the ground had disappeared. After only looking at it for a few seconds, Sumu continued to move forward. Go. Fatty Wang sighed. Alas, I'm used to this trick again in this damn place, so let's go. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 272. Fatty Wang sighed, oh, this damn place is doing this again. I'm used to it. Let's go. The torches on both sides of the tomb passage were all burning. Mi Yuping took a piece of yellow paper and put it on it. After the interview, the yellow paper instantly caught fire. It seemed that the fire was real. As we walked, the road finally came to an end. In front of everyone, a huge animal head relief appeared, with oil paint splashed on it, just like the real thing. If it weren't for the good lighting here, I'm afraid everyone would really think of it as a monster. There is a small room inside. The road ends here. It is surrounded by yellow brick walls typical of ancient times without any decorations. Everyone groped carefully, trying to find the mechanism to get inside. Fatty Wang smiled and said, "Sister Shirley Yang, the museum you visited has such a wall." Shirley Yang glanced at Fatty Wang angrily, knowing that he was telling a joke. Mina Yuping touched the walls on both sides, but there was no special mechanism at all. They didn't find the mechanism either. At this time, Mina Yuping suddenly remembered the door he had encountered in the Suanwu tomb before, so he ran to the wall in front and pushed forward hard, but there was no movement at all. Mina Yuping pushed hard twice more and gave up. Sumu has been looking at this relief that is a unicorn, and Mina Yuping is also observing from the side. The relief seems to be a hole with the wall, and there is no gap at all. Hubei suddenly came over and cursed, "Damn it, why are these ancient people so troublesome?" He punched the beast-headed man on the forehead. Unexpectedly, the entire wall changed. The beast's head suddenly shook, and everyone quickly took a few steps back. Hubei said, "I must have done something wrong. Is this beast head going to be resurrected?" Mina Yuping had already aimed his gun at the beast head. If there was anything abnormal, he could shoot immediately. Gun. Just after the beast's head shook for more than 10 seconds, it suddenly sank into the ground, and another way forward appeared in front of everyone. When Hubei saw that there was no danger, he breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Fortunately, nothing happened, otherwise I would have become a sinner." Mina Yuping looked inside the tunnel. It was the same as outside. There are torches on both sides and murals on the walls. Everyone continued to move forward without any hesitation. This tunnel was not long and had no forks. Not long after everyone walked, they came to a new room. When everyone came to the door of the room, they were completely shocked. Men Yuping subconsciously picked up the gun. Even Sumu couldn't help but take a step back. In front of him was a new tomb chamber. This tomb chamber was not as magnificent as before. On the contrary, it even had a sense of dilapidation, which was somewhat incompatible with the tomb passages he had seen before. Of course, this is not the reason why everyone is suddenly nervous. The reason why everyone was frightened was because the walls inside were all covered with corpses, each one strangled by the neck, occupying the entire wall space of the tomb. I don't know how many years they have been hanging here. They are all dried out and only the bones are left. However, have they completely turned into white bones? On their corpses, you can see a layer of black dried meat wrapped around the bones. This should be corpses that have been embalmed by their ancient people. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 273. After experiencing so many things before, everyone has become much more cautious. Standing outside the tomb, everyone kept looking inside. Directly in front, Mina Yuping saw another door. In other words, if everyone wanted to continue going deeper, they had to pass through this place. Mina Yuping looked inside at the corpses and saw that their furnishings were stacked one on top of the other. There were 9 layers in total, and 9 corpses were hung on each layer, showing the trend of 99 being 1. Throwing a stone inside, Mina Yuping saw that the corpses inside were not moving, so he asked Sumu, "Why does this place look like a mountain of corpses and a pagoda?" Pagoda is a translation from India, that is, the meaning of pagoda is a place used to worship statues of gods. However, the Corpse Mountain Pagoda is completely different. It locks all the souls of these people inside, preventing them from reincarnation forever. Sumyu said this place should be the Shishin Pagoda. King Nalu wants to establish a dynasty in the underworld. I'm afraid he wants to lock up the souls of these 81 people for his use. Hearing this, Hubei suddenly asked in a low voice, "Brother, what do you mean? Is there a ghost here?" Sumyu did not answer, but asked Fat Wang, "What do you think?" Wang the fat man made a few gestures, and Mi Nayuping remembered that this was the method he used to drive away corpses before. Then he took a step forward, just reaching the junction between the outside and the inside of the door. He turned around and said, "Oh, they are all poor people. There is nothing in their bodies for a long time. It seems that their souls have been sucked dry by something." Fatty Wang's words mean that these corpses will not be fake. However, this also means that there is a very fierce guy here, who has already sucked the souls of at least 81 people in front of him. Although there was panic inside, as long as there was no danger, everyone walked inside and came to the door. Shirley Yang looked at the corpses on the wall and sighed, "I'm afraid these are all slaves. I didn't expect that they were enslaved in life and could not be freed after death." Mi Nayuping couldn't help but remain silent. This is why there are no coffins in modern people's tombs. For such a terrifying reason, it is simply impossible for everyone to lay out such a terrifying pattern and find so many people to be buried with them. The door looked like it hadn't been touched for a long time, and there was a lot of sand accumulated on the handle. The handle was in the shape of two suns. Seeing that the big sun had 12 grooves and the small sun had exactly 12 points, Menjuping twisted them together. However, the door did not open. At this time, Hubei suddenly said, "Brother, why do I feel like those corpses are smiling at me?" When Mi Nayuping heard this, he quickly turned around and saw that the corpses were all behind Fatty Wang, all hanging. There was no change at all, and he still looked like he was being tortured in pain. Just as Sumyu was about to answer, Shirley Yang suddenly said, "Brother, I saw it too. Those corpses seemed to be really smiling." Seeing that there was no abnormality in the corpses, Mi Nayuping quickly turned around to look at the two of them. "I saw that their eyes were a little blurry and had no focus at all." When Fatty Wang saw it, he said, "No, this damn pagoda captures souls. I didn't expect this place to be a formation of its own. These two people have never practiced and are already lost." After hearing this, Mi Nayuping hurriedly speed up the door handle. Sumyu drew something on the two of their eyes in the air, and said softly, "Report the soul and guard one, close your eyes." As soon as the words fell, both of them closed their eyes and fell softly to the ground, and actually fell asleep. The stuffy oil bottle pressed the tip in several times, but the door still didn't move. At this time, the two people on the ground were about to wake up again. Sumyu said, "Brother, since King Lu wants to establish an empire in the underworld, it must be that the sun does not cover the shade. You try to make these sharp points not block the grooves at all." After hearing this, Mi Nayuping quickly modified the small at the position of the sun. When all 12 black grooves were exposed, the door rumbled open on its own. Without saying a word to Fatty Wang, Mi Nayuping quickly dragged the two of them on the ground and entered. The moment everyone entered, they both woke up. Hubei touched his butt and said, "Damn it, why did my butt suddenly feel a burning pain?" After hearing this, Mi Nayuping Liang quickly stood in front of Sumyu, pretending not to know anything. Sumyu shouted, "You too, be careful and don't look at what's under your feet." Upon hearing this, Mi Nayuping quickly looked down and saw that the narrow tomb passage was filled with black scorpions one after another. One of them had already climbed onto the back of Mi Nayuping's shoe. Mi Nayuping was so frightened that he quickly shook it hard and threw it away. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 274. Not daring to stay too long, everyone hurriedly ran through this area. Walking inside, everyone entered a tomb chamber again. There was nothing weird in this tomb chamber. In front of everyone is another golden box with a head of Kylan carved on it. On both sides of the box, stood two 2-meter high sculptures, both with black animal heads and human bodies. Their armors were all made of gold. They all held a long scythe in their hands. There was a cold light shining on it, but there was no a trace of embroidery. Fatty Wang paused and said, "It's his grandfather's. Do ancient people like boxes so much? Why is there another one here and everyone can't open it?" Sumu touched the edge of the box and said, "Open." Then, I took out an iron pole from the bag. One end was flat and could be inserted into the crack. Mi Nayuping looked at Sumu's backpack and couldn't help but said, "Sumu, your bag is amazing. It has everything." Sumu ignored Mi Nayuping and was about to pry the box. I saw that he pressed hard 2 or 3 times, but the lid of the box did not react at all. Fatty Wang looked at it, rolled up his sleeves, spat on his hands and said, "Brother, let me try it." As he said that, the two exchanged positions. Speaking of size, no one can shut up Fatty Wang. His arms are as thick as his own legs. He pressed his hands down hard and shouted, "Get up." Everyone saw that his face turned red from suppressing it, and the arms that were pressing the iron pole began to tremble. Finally, only a click was heard. The iron rod is broken. Because Fatty Wang was too strong, as soon as the iron rod broke, he fell back and fell to the ground. Mi Nayuping admired his strength from the bottom of his heart. Even an iron rod as thick as 2 thumbs was completely broken by him. At the same time, I have to lament the sturdiness of this box, and it seems that I have to find another way. Mi Nayubo squatted down to check the box and found a keyhole-like place on it, which should be a switch, but it seemed that part of it was missing. Sumu also saw this mechanism. He touched it twice with his hands, and then turned his attention to the defender on the side. I saw a half-moon-shaped ruby necklace hanging around their necks. Mi Nayuping compared the necklace and the keyhole, then had an idea, and looked at Sumu excitedly. Sumu probably had the same idea as Mi Nayuping, so he nodded to Mi Nayuping, and everyone stood aside, ready to get the necklace. In ancient tombs, the most taboo thing is to take treasures at will, which may trigger some mechanisms. Mi Nayuping and Sumu observed it for a long time, and finally decided to stand behind the 2 guards to get the necklace, and let the 3 of them stand next to everyone. After everyone stood up, Mi Nayuping and Sumu looked at each other and took out the necklace with a sudden movement. The moment everyone took off the necklaces, they heard a snap, and the 2 scythes in the hands of the guards fell directly, hitting the ground in front of them, making 2 big holes. Mi Nayuping breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that everyone was in the correct position. Put the 2 necklaces together and they will automatically form a small disc, attracting each other like magnets. Menjubo was about to stick the key on it when Hubei suddenly asked, "Brother, are there any mechanisms in this box, such as poison gas, bows and arrows, etc.?"